What if I told you that the jigging technique you've perfected over the years, the one you were taught, the one that feels so right in your hand, is actually a fish repellent? It sounds crazy, I know, but today, we're not talking about fancy gear or secret spots. We're going to talk about why your jigging looks fake, robotic, and downright scary to the fish you're trying to catch. By the end of this video, you're going to understand how a fish sees your lure, and I promise you, it will change the way you fish forever. There is one tiny, almost invisible detail in your presentation that separates the guys who limit out from everyone else. So let me ask you this before we dive in. Do you believe a perfect, consistent rhythm is the key to good jigging? Let me know down in the comments. I'm really curious to see who's with me on this before we blow it all up. Look, jigging is a fundamental skill, especially for us ice anglers. We spend countless hours out there in the cold, hunched over a hole, trying to master it. And what are most of us taught? We're told to find a rhythm, a nice, steady tap, tap, tap pause. Repeat. It becomes muscle memory. We can do it in our sleep. We do it for years, decades even, because it feels productive. We feel like we are actively fishing, but we almost never stop to ask the most important question. Does this look like real food to a fish? Think about it. We are human beings. Our brains are wired to love patterns, order, and rhythm. Music, machines, our daily routines. It's all based on predictability. But down there, under the ice, it's a world of chaos. Survival is about unpredictability. And a smart, wary fish sees our perfect man-made rhythm, and its brain screams one thing: trap. Let's start with the biggest culprit, the metronome mistake. Imagine a metronome on a piano, that perfect, unwavering tick-tock, tick-tock. Now, picture your hand holding a fishing rod, doing the exact same thing. Up, down, up, down. A perfect, predictable cadence. It feels right to us because it's controlled and consistent. But for a fish, it's the most unnatural thing in the world. Nothing in their environment moves with such flawless robotic precision. A water flea doesn't pulse in perfect time. A dying minnow doesn't flutter with a musician's timing. Their movements are erratic, desperate, and full of pauses and mistakes. Your perfect rhythm is a dead giveaway that what they're looking at isn't a living creature. It's a foreign object being manipulated from above. It's like seeing a puppet with visible strings. You're not fooling anyone, especially not a fish whose life depends on telling the difference between food and danger. That metronome beat is the sound of an empty bucket. This leads right into the next problem. We forget the why. Why are you jigging in the first place? You're trying to imitate something. Your jig is supposed to be a freshwater shrimp, a scud, a minnow on its last legs, or a larva falling through the water column. Now, I want you to seriously ask yourself, have you ever seen any of those creatures dance a perfect jig? Of course not. A real creature flutters, then stops. It might dart sideways for an inch. It might hang completely motionless for 5 seconds. Then it might give a tiny, almost imperceptible quiver. Its movements are dictated by currents, survival instincts, and the last vestiges of life. Your job as an angler isn't to create a rhythm. Your job is to be an actor. You need to make that piece of metal and plastic look vulnerable, confused, and alive. If your cadence is the same on every single drop, you're not imitating life. You're just making a piece of metal bounce up and down, and the fish know it. Now let's talk about the overly aggressive shake. You see it all the time. Guys who think more action equals more attention. They grab the rod and just vibrate it like crazy, making the tip a complete blur. They think they're calling fish in. But what does that actually look like underwater? It doesn't look like a subtle, easy meal. It looks like something having a violent seizure. It looks like a threat. Imagine you're a perch. You see this thing absolutely freaking out in the water column. Your instinct isn't to go eat it. Your instinct is to be cautious. What is that thing? Is it dangerous? That violent, high-frequency shaking sends out pressure waves and vibrations that are totally alien. A tiny insect doesn't vibrate like a cell phone on silent. This aggressive shaking is the equivalent of yelling in a library. You'll get attention, sure, but it's not the kind of attention you want. You're scaring away the very fish you're trying to attract. It signals danger, not dinner. One of the most critical parts of jigging is the pause, but most anglers get it wrong with what I call fake pauses. They're not real pauses. they are just a beat in their metronome rhythm. It's jig, jig, beat, jig, jig, beat. The lure never truly comes to a complete stop. It never hangs there, looking vulnerable and exposed. A true pause is a dead stop. For 2, 5, even 10 seconds. This is the moment a following fish makes its decision. It's been watching this strange thing moving, and now it has stopped. It's a moment of vulnerability. This is when the fish will come in for a closer look, and this is usually when they strike. But if you're too impatient, if you're a slave to your rhythm, you never give them that chance. You have to fight the human urge to always be doing something. You need to master the art of the absolute dead still pause. Let the lure hang there and listen with your line. That stillness is what often triggers the bite, not the frantic movement before it. Here's a technical one that ruins so many presentations. The line is a liar. What I mean is, a tight line during the fall is your worst enemy. After you lift your jig, you let it fall. But many anglers maintain tension on the line the entire time. They want to feel the bite on the drop. But what they're actually doing is killing the lure's natural action. It's like lowering a puppet straight down on a string. The jig can't flutter, spiral, or glide the way its designers intended. It just plummets unnaturally. The solution is to use a semi-slack line on the fall. After you lift, you follow the line down with your rod tip, letting the line have a slight bow in it. This gives the jig the freedom to do its dance, to spiral and flutter like a dying creature. This is when 90% of your bites on the fall will happen. You have to become a line watcher, not a line feeler. Watch for that tiny twitch or jump in the slack line. Stop letting your tight line force your lure into an unnatural, boring, straight-down dive. Another huge mistake is completely ignoring the lure's design. We buy dozens of jigs, tungsten, lead, plastic, with different shapes, sizes, and weights. And then what do? We tie one on and subject it to our one-size-fits-all jigging cadence. This makes no sense. A flat, wide jig like a clam drop is designed to flutter and glide on the fall. If you use short, sharp jigs, you kill that action. It needs a higher lift and a slack line fall to work its magic. On the other hand, a small, dense tungsten teardrop is designed for subtle quivers and micro movements. If you're ripping it a foot up and down, you're not using it correctly. You're just a person bouncing metal. You have to take a moment to understand what each lure in your box is supposed to do. Your job is to facilitate its intended action, not to force it into your personal robotic rhythm. Stop treating all your lures the same. Read the lure and give it the action it was born to have. Think about the world your lure lives in. We tend to trap it in a vertical prison. We drop it down the hole, and it spends its entire life moving strictly up and down in a tiny 1-inch wide column of water. How many real creatures do that? Almost none. Prey moves horizontally. It darts from side to side. It drifts with the current. Your jig, stuck in its vertical prison, looks incredibly suspicious. You need to break it out of jail. How? After your jig hits the bottom, try slowly dragging it a foot to the side. Then lift and let it pendulum back to the center. Use higher, more sweeping lifts to make the jig glide and swim outside of that central column. Even tiny changes in horizontal position can make a huge difference. It makes the lure look like it's exploring and moving with purpose, rather than being a marionette jerked up and down by an invisible force. Free your lure from its vertical prison, and it will start looking a lot more like a real meal. As anglers, we all suffer from a fear of stillness. We get out on the ice, and we feel this overwhelming need to be doing something. If our rod tip isn't moving, we feel like we're not fishing. We feel unproductive. But I'm here to tell you that sometimes the most productive and powerful technique is to do absolutely nothing. It's called dead sticking. Let the lure sit completely still, either on the bottom or suspended in the water column. This is incredibly hard for our impatient human brains to accept. But think about it from the fish's perspective. It sees this potential meal just sitting there, not moving, completely vulnerable. It's the easiest possible meal. For neutral or negative fish, this is often the only thing that will trigger a bite. That absolute stillness can be more attractive than any fancy jigging cadence you can invent. You have to fight that internal voice telling you to jig, jig, jig. Embrace the power of doing nothing. Your fear of stillness is costing you fish. A critical error is using the wrong speed for the mood of the fish. Fish are not robots. Their energy levels change dramatically throughout the day. Their mood is dictated by water temperature, barometric pressure, light levels, and oxygen content. On a cold, high-pressure bluebird day, those fish might be extremely lethargic. Their metabolism is slow, and they don't want to chase anything. If you come in with a fast, aggressive jigging presentation, you're not going to get bit. Your lure will just zip past them, looking like way too much work for a meal. It's more of an annoyance than an opportunity. You have to learn to read the conditions and the fish's mood. Start slow and subtle. If you're marking fish but getting no bites, slow down even more. Go smaller, barely move the jig. Match your speed to their energy level. Trying to force-feed a fast presentation to slow-moving fish is a recipe for failure. Let's be honest, we are creatures of habit, and human predictability is a major flaw when it comes to fishing. A smart, pressured fish, especially a big, old one, has seen it all. After it watches your lure for 30 seconds, it has your number. It knows your pattern. It's jig, jig, long pause, jig, jig, long pause. The fish literally learns your rhythm and knows it's fake. You have to be unpredictable. You have to break your own patterns. Try this. 2 quick jigs, a 3-second pause, 1 long slow lift, a 10-second pause, 5 tiny quivers, then let it fall. Mix it up constantly. Never let the fish figure you out. Think of it like a pitcher in baseball. If he throws the same fastball every single time, the batter is going to hit a home run. He has to mix in curveballs and change-ups to keep the batter guessing. You need to be that pitcher. Your predictability is making it easy for the fish to ignore you. Be random. Be chaotic. Be alive. We often focus only on what the fish sees, but we completely forget about what it hears and feels. Let's talk about the sound of deception. Fish have a lateral line, an incredible sensory organ that runs down their sides. It allows them to detect tiny vibrations and pressure changes in the water. When you're doing sharp, aggressive snaps with your jig, you're creating unnatural sound waves. That braided or fluorocarbon line cutting through the water at high speed creates a distinct whipping sound and vibration. This isn't the subtle flutter of a bug's wings or the gentle flick of a minnow's tail. It's a sharp, mechanical noise that screams danger. You need to be more subtle. Use smoother lifts. Let the lure's action do the work instead of violently ripping it. The underwater world is a place of nuanced sounds. Your loud, artificial noise is like a car alarm going off in a quiet forest. It doesn't attract, it repels. One of the most overlooked parts of the presentation is the initial fall. You get to your spot, you rig up, and you just open the bail and let your jig plummet to the bottom as fast as it can. You're in a hurry to get fishing, but you just missed one of the best opportunities to get bit. That initial drop is your first impression. Instead of just letting it bomb down, control the fall. Let it drop 10 feet, then stop it. Give it a couple of little twitches. Let it drop another 5 feet, then pause again. This mimics an injured or disoriented creature sinking through the water column. It looks vulnerable from the moment it enters the water. Fish will often see this from a distance and race over to intercept it before it ever reaches your target zone. Many of the most aggressive strikes of the day happen on that first controlled drop. Stop rushing. Start fishing the fall. It's not just a way to get to the bottom, it's a critical part of your presentation. Beware of becoming a copy-paste angler. It's a classic scenario. You're out on the ice and it's a tough bite, but the guy 50 yards away is just hammering them. You sneak a look through your binoculars and you watch his rod tip. You see his cadence. 1, 2, 3, little shake, pause. So what do? You go back to your hole and you try to copy his exact rhythm, but you still don't get bit. Why? Because you're only seeing one piece of the puzzle. You don't know that he's using a 4-pound test line while you're using 6. You don't know that he's using a tiny tungsten jig while you have a heavier lead one. You don't know that his rod has a much softer tip. That cadence that works perfectly for his specific setup is a complete disaster for yours. Your heavier lure on your stiffer rod is moving 10 times as much with that same hand movement. Stop trying to copy-paste what you see. You need to understand your own gear and learn what your lure is doing on your line. Focus on your own screen, not someone else's. Our jigging vocabulary is often too limited. It's all about sharp jigs and snaps and pops. But we're missing the most important words, soft and subtle. The deadliest movements are often the ones you can barely see or feel. I'm talking about gentle, slow lifts that raise the jig just 6 inches over 10 seconds. I'm talking about tiny, almost imperceptible quivers that you create not with your wrist, but by just tapping the rod blank with your index finger. These micro-movements are what a real aquatic insect or larva does. They don't have bones and muscles to make big, aggressive jumps. They twitch, they pulse, they slowly crawl. This is especially true for highly pressured fish or fish in a negative mood. They will ignore your big, loud movements, but they will absolutely inhale a jig that is just barely quivering in place. You have to add these soft skills to your arsenal. It's not all about aggression. Finesse is what puts the biggest fish on the ice. Here's a hard truth. Your rod tip is a poor indicator of what's really happening down there. We are trained from day one to watch that rod tip and wait for the thump or the big tick that signals a bite. And yes, sometimes aggressive fish will slam it and you'll feel it plain as day. But on most days, especially with finicky panfish like perch or crappie, the bite is much more subtle. The most common bite is the up bite. The fish comes in from below, inhales the stationary jig, and continues to swim upwards slightly. Your lure goes weightless. Your rod tip won't go down. It will actually pop up slightly, and your line will go slack. If you're only watching for a downward tap, you will miss this bite 100% of the time. You have to learn to watch the line itself right where it enters the water. Did it go slack? Did it move sideways? These are the real signs. Stop waiting for the thump. Start looking for the subtle clues. You must adjust your technique based on the bottom composition. Many anglers have one mode for bottom fishing: pound it. They let the jig hit the bottom and then repeatedly pound it up and down, creating a big cloud of silt and mud. On a soft, mucky bottom, this can sometimes work. That puff of mud can attract curious fish to see what the commotion is. But what if you're on a hard bottom, like sand or gravel or rock? Pounding a heavy jig on a rock creates a loud, unnatural clank that can spook fish for yards. On that hard bottom, a much better approach is a gentle tap. Let the jig touch down, then just barely lift and let it tick the bottom again. This can imitate a crawfish or a nymph scurrying along the rocks. Or try a drag. Let the jig hit bottom and just slowly drag it a few inches. This looks like a creature trying to crawl away. Using the same aggressive bottom bouncing technique everywhere is a sign of a one-dimensional angler. Let the bottom tell you how to fish it. Let's talk about the great color versus action fallacy. We spend so much time and mental energy on color. We have boxes filled with jigs in every shade imaginable. Electric chicken, glow red, motor oil. We'll stand in a store for an hour debating if the perch will prefer chartreuse with orange spots or orange with chartreuse spots. And yes, on some days, color can make a small difference. It can be that final 10%. But the truth is, a fish will eat a gray rock if it moves correctly. We obsess over the paint job while completely ignoring the fact that our presentation is robotic, unnatural, and scaring the fish away. Action is 90% of the equation. Presentation is king. I would rather fish with a plain, unpainted jig that I can make look alive than the most beautiful, multicolored lure presented with a stiff, metronome-like cadence. Stop blaming the color of your lure. The problem is much more likely to be the person holding the rod. Get the action right first, then worry about the paint. The problem often starts with you, not the rod. Your own body acts as an amplifier of unnaturalness. Think about how you're holding the rod. Is your arm tense? Is your shoulder hunched up to your ear? Are you shivering from the cold? Every bit of that tension, every shiver, every jerky muscle movement travels directly from your body, down the rod blank, through the sensitive line, and is amplified on that tiny jig 30 feet below. The fish feels all of it. A truly great jigging angler is relaxed. They use a pencil grip. The movement comes from their fingers and wrist, not their whole arm and shoulder. It's a delicate, fluid motion. If you're tense and rigid, your jig will be tense and rigid. It's that simple. Before you even start jigging, take a deep breath. Relax your shoulder. Loosen your grip. Your lure is an extension of your body. If your body is stiff and mechanical, your lure will be too. A calm angler presents a much more natural-looking bait. We need to debunk the myth of constant motion. There's a common belief, especially among new anglers, that the lure must always be moving to keep the fish's attention. If it stops, the fish will get bored and swim away. This is completely false. In fact, It's often the exact opposite. Think about it from a predator-prey standpoint. A rabbit running from a coyote will often freeze dead in its tracks, hoping the predator will lose sight of it. Small creatures in the water do the same thing. They will often stop moving entirely to avoid detection. For a predator fish, like a walleye or a big perch, seeing its target suddenly freeze is a massive trigger. It signals vulnerability. It signals that the prey has made a mistake and thinks it's hiding. This is the moment to strike. The pause isn't just a break in your jigging, it's a calculated move. You are intentionally making your bait look like it's trying and failing to hide. That's a trigger that a predator cannot resist. Finally, you have to remember that you are the puppet master. That jig is not a magic fish-catching device. On its own, it's just a dumb piece of metal. It is a puppet, and your rod and line are the strings. Your job is to be a master puppeteer. You are trying to put on a show for an audience of one, the fish. Your goal is to make that puppet look alive, scared, injured, and most importantly, edible. If your puppet's dance is stiff, repetitive, and robotic, the audience isn't going to buy it. They're going to see the strings. They're going to know it's a fake. You need to become an artist. You need to feel what the lure is doing. You need to impart chaos, subtlety, and life into that puppet. The best anglers aren't the ones with the best equipment. They are the best storytellers. They can make a simple piece of lead tell a very convincing story of a dying creature. And that is a story that fish always want to see the end of. So, the big takeaway from all of this is pretty simple. Stop being a metronome. Stop being predictable. Your human love of rhythm and patterns, the very thing that feels right and productive to you, is what looks completely alien and wrong to a fish. The real turning point in your fishing isn't buying a new lure or a fancier flasher. It's the aha moment when you realize your jigging has been a monologue, when it should be a conversation. You've just been yelling at the fish. You need to learn to listen with your line, be unpredictable, and truly act like the vulnerable prey you're trying to imitate. Thank you so much for watching. If this video changed how you think about jigging, do me a favor and hit that like button. And make sure you subscribe for more tips that challenge the old way of doing things. Now, I have a question for you, and I want you to be honest. What's the one unnatural habit you're going to try and break on your next fishing trip? Drop your answer in the comments below. Let's talk about it.